Tell me about wills. I'm Dan Covington. I'm an estate planning attorney. I've been doing estate planning for just over 20 years now. A last will and testament can be central to an estate plan, right? However, your will doesn't change the title to any assets without going through probate in a state court. You don't hear that much from me about wills because, in my opinion, trusts are quite a lot better. Still, this time we're only going to talk about wills. So they can be a little technical, but they do two main things. They say who gets your assets, and they name an executor. So first, who gets your assets? This is a part you're probably familiar with. A very common thing is to say, I leave everything to my spouse. If they do not survive me, then I want everything divided equally among my children. You can also divide assets by type of asset or by amount, percentages, but this method is very common. You might just as quickly say, I leave the farm to my oldest child and all other assets and investments to my younger child, something of that sort. These are things you're probably a little familiar with. The other main part of a will, you name an executor. So the executor is someone who handles your estate once you pass away, right? They marshal assets, they pay bills and claims, they deal with the lawyer, yay. And they ultimately are the person who might distribute assets. People often name their spouse as their first choice of executor, and of course it makes sense to name someone younger as an alternate, right? Just playing the odds, you want someone who's going to be around after you to be your executor. So how does a will then work? So once you sign it, you save it, often stored in a safe deposit box or a safe somewhere, and you let someone know, of course, where and how to find it. It doesn't in Kansas get filed during your life. There's no, you don't need to deposit the will at the courthouse or preserve it ahead of time. You just sign it and you save it. Then once you pass away, it needs to be submitted to the state court for probate. In Kansas, that's called the district court for a given county. And again, it doesn't pass title assets until the court accepts it for probate and orders that change in ownership. So once it's accepted, anyway, I'll let you know. Here's kind of a very, very abbreviated and oversimplistic version of the most plain probate proceeding. So you contact an attorney, you file the will, you get an executor appointed, they file an inventory of the estate assets. I'm not talking about all the timelines here because there are several and various, but the executor files an inventory of the estate assets. You give notice to the heirs, devisees, and legatees. That's anyone who might receive a benefit from the will if the will is or is not accepted. You publish notice in the newspaper that the case was filed. You give a deadline in there for creditors to file claims. Then once the assets are all accounted for, claims are satisfied or denied, some combination of the executor actions and the court order is required to distribute assets to the estate. So sometimes it might be the court orders that this real estate is set over to the spouse or the children, or 2 or 3 or 4 children. Sometimes it might be the executor writes a couple of checks out of the net balance of the remaining bank account assets and divides it among 2, 3, 5, 10 people. But I'll just say that every estate differs, but it's not uncommon at all for 6 months and a few $1,000s in expenses and attorney fees to be involved in a fairly simple estate. So good or bad, like it or not, those are some basic generalities about a probate estate. So there you go. That's the bare bones without much opinion on wills. Now you know what wills do and how they work. Again, I'm Dan Covington. You can always find me at Estate Plan Kansas.